Dr. Maya Ellison stood at the podium in front of hundreds gathered at the downtown plaza. As a civil rights attorney, a decorated Army veteran, and daughter of a civil rights icon, she was known for her poise, intelligence, and powerful voice. Her speech that evening wasn't just a call for justice. It was a bold indictment of the city's long-standing police corruption. Maya didn't mince words. She cited facts, mentioned lawsuits, and declared her intention to push for a complete overhaul of the police department. Among the crowd were two officers watching from a distance, LT Craig Briggs and SGT Dean Danner, both known inside the department as untouchables. They had connections, covered each other's tracks, and had built careers off intimidating witnesses, framing suspects, and cutting deals with judges behind closed doors. Maya had unknowingly rattled their cage, and they saw her rising influence as a direct threat to their control. Later that night, as Maya drove home from the event, she noticed headlights trailing her for several miles. She wasn't speeding, her tags were valid, and she had done nothing wrong, but a gut feeling told her something wasn't right. Before she could act, flashing red and blue lights appeared in her rearview mirror. She pulled over calmly, reminding herself to stay collected. Briggs and Danner approached with manufactured aggression. One ordered her to step out of the vehicle while the other began searching her car without consent. Maya calmly asked if they had probable cause, but she was met with sneering sarcasm. Moments later, Danner emerged holding a bag of white powder and a small handgun wrapped in a plastic bag. "Looks like we've got ourselves a problem," he said mockingly. "Illegal firearm and possession with intent. That's a felony, ma'am." Maya was stunned. She knew exactly what was happening, but protesting would make her seem combative. Instead, she asked for a supervisor. They laughed and called in a backup unit, knowing the story would be locked in and documented under their control. News of her arrest broke within hours. Local media ran the headline, "Prominent attorney arrested for drug and weapons possession." The mugshot of Maya without context was plastered across news stations and social media. Commentators speculated on her character. Anonymous police sources leaked claims of her being combative and hostile during the stop. Behind the scenes, Briggs and Danner moved fast. They contacted Judge Hafford, a man who had helped them bury problematic cases before. Hafford agreed to hold Maya without bail for 48 hours pending review, buying them time to tamper with the evidence and scrub digital records. They deleted body cam footage and filed their narrative in official reports, painting Maya as erratic and dangerous. In her holding cell, Maya sat quietly, thinking. She wasn't broken, she was calculating. She understood the system, the law, and more importantly, the minds of men who thought they were invincible. What they didn't realize was that Maya wasn't alone. She had allies, connections in high places, and a legal mind sharper than any they'd ever encountered. They thought they had buried her. But they didn't know she was about to bury their careers. With Dr. Maya Ellison behind bars, Briggs and SGT Danner moved quickly to tighten the noose around her. The arrest was only the beginning. The real plan was to destroy her credibility, keep her tied up in court, and send a message to anyone else who dared to challenge their grip on the city's power structure. But to do that, they needed help from someone who could manipulate the system from the inside. Judge Thomas Hafford had been on the bench for nearly 2 decades. He wore the black robe of justice, but everyone in the know understood his true colors. Hafford had long-standing ties to the city's police union, received campaign donations from undisclosed law enforcement PACs, and often dismissed cases involving officer misconduct without explanation. In exchange, the department looked the other way on his shady land deals and unreported financial gifts. When Briggs contacted Hafford, it was more of a reminder than a request. "You know what she's trying to do?" Briggs said during their off-the-record meeting in the judge's private chambers. "She's coming for all of us. You help us now, we all stay clean." Hafford nodded. "I'll make it stick." The judge then signed off on a motion to delay Maya's access to discovery evidence, claiming ongoing investigation concerns. He also quietly approved a warrant to search Maya's apartment, giving Danner and a hand-picked team access to plant additional evidence, an unregistered burner phone, and a set of coded documents suggesting she had ties to a criminal enterprise. These items were later listed in court filings as part of an emerging conspiracy case. Meanwhile, Maya had been released on bail thanks to a national legal advocacy group that had taken interest in her case. Although shaken, she remained composed. Publicly, she made no statements, choosing silence over media spectacles. Privately, however, she was already preparing a counterattack. Maya assembled a small but elite legal team. Her longtime mentor, Isaac Harlow, a former federal prosecutor known for taking down corrupt institutions. Layla Ortiz, a brilliant forensic data analyst. And Ron Talley, an ex-FBI agent turned private investigator. Together, they began dissecting the arrest. Inch by inch. Ron discovered that the officers who filed the reports, Briggs and Danner, had been linked to 3 prior internal investigations for excessive force and falsifying statements, all mysteriously dismissed by Hafford's court. Layla started combing through old department digital archives, looking for corrupted body cam files and missing timestamps. Maya knew what she was up against. This wasn't just about her. It was about a deeply entrenched system built on fear, favors, and silence. But she had something the corrupt trio didn't: the truth, discipline, and nothing left to lose. The first court hearing was scheduled in 2 weeks. Hafford intended to make it a formality. He expected Maya to fold, to cut a deal to save face. But what he didn't know was that Maya was planning to represent herself and expose every inch of the conspiracy in open court. The trap they set for her was about to become their own undoing. The courthouse buzzed with tension on the morning of the preliminary hearing. Reporters, legal analysts, and curious citizens filled the pews. Most had come expecting the fall of a once-respected attorney. Few anticipated what would unfold. Dr. Maya Ellison entered the courtroom not as a broken defendant, but as a resolute warrior. Dressed in a navy suit with her signature calm gaze, she walked to the defense table and stunned everyone by announcing she would represent herself. Murmurs began instantly. Even the prosecution smirked. They saw it as desperation. But Maya knew exactly what she was doing. Judge Hafford, sitting high above the courtroom, attempted to maintain the appearance of neutrality. Though his discomfort was obvious to those paying close attention, L.T. Briggs and S.G.T. Danner sat several rows back, smug and confident, already dreaming of Maya's conviction. Maya began her opening statement not by defending herself, but by asking the court to look at patterns. "I'm not asking you to judge me by my resume," she said. "I'm asking you to look at the facts and ask yourself who benefits if I'm silenced." She outlined inconsistencies in the police report, highlighted how body cam footage was accidentally deleted, and hinted that new evidence would reveal the full story. The prosecution countered with a confident performance, rehashing the items found in her vehicle and home. They painted Maya as someone who used her prestige as a cover for criminal activity and argued that her legal knowledge made her even more dangerous. But their evidence, when scrutinized, lacked depth. They had no fingerprints on the weapon. The drugs had no DNA trace. The burner phone showed no records connected to Maya. Over the next few days, Maya systematically dismantled their case. She cross-examined the officers with surgical precision, exposing contradictions in their testimonies. When Briggs said she was visibly nervous and twitchy, Maya calmly played traffic footage retrieved independently that showed her still and cooperative. When Danner claimed the drugs were in the glove compartment, Maya produced photos, taken immediately after the stop, showing it empty. But it was her use of timeline data that truly began to shift momentum. With Layla Ortiz's help, Maya had secured the GPS logs from her own vehicle's onboard system. It showed the exact minute she pulled over and, more importantly, that her car had been stopped for almost 6 full minutes before the officers radioed in any discovery. 6 minutes, Maya said, pausing for emphasis. That's enough time to plant a future. In the gallery, journalists scribbled furiously. Public opinion online began to change. Hashtags supporting Maya began trending. Anonymous tips started flowing into her team from whistleblowers, former police officers, courthouse staff, even city workers who had long suspected corruption but were too afraid to act out despite Judge Hafford's efforts to control the courtroom. The power dynamics were shifting. Maya wasn't just defending herself anymore, she was peeling back the layers of a citywide conspiracy, and everyone watching knew it. As the trial proceeded, the officers realized with growing dread that this was no ordinary defendant. This was a reckoning. And the truth was finally gaining momentum. By the time court resumed for the second week of hearings, the tone had completely changed. The prosecution, once confident and dismissive, now seemed cautious. The gallery was packed again, this time with national news crews, civil rights observers, and community members who had rallied behind Maya Ellison. What began as a local scandal was rapidly becoming a national reckoning. Maya returned to the courtroom with a quiet confidence. She wasn't just dismantling the case against her. She was preparing to expose the rot at the heart of the city's justice system. Her first move that morning shook the room. She filed a motion to introduce newly uncovered internal communications between L.T. Briggs, S.G.T. Danner, and Judge Hafford. These included emails, texts, and call logs that had been obtained by her legal team after a whistleblower from within the courthouse shared a secure file dump. The messages revealed conversations between the officers and Hafford before the arrest, discussing Maya by name and strategizing on how to shut her down. Judge Hafford, suddenly pale and fidgeting behind the bench, tried to stall. He questioned the legality of the documents. But Maya calmly countered, citing chain of custody records and the whistleblower's sworn affidavit. The judge was forced to allow them in. The courtroom went silent as Maya read one of the texts aloud. We'll give her the full treatment. Plant, seize, spin. She won't be speaking in public again. You just do your part in court. The sender. That Craig Briggs. The recipient, Judge Thomas Hafford. Gasps erupted. Even some of the jurors looked visibly shaken. Hafford, in a panic, called for a recess, but Maya wasn't finished. When court resumed, she brought in her next witness, Detective Carla Winslow, a former internal affairs officer who had quietly resigned 2 years earlier. Under oath, Winslow testified about a pattern of corruption within the department, specifically involving Briggs and Danner. She confirmed that several complaints and investigations against them were mysteriously closed or rerouted, usually after private meetings with Judge Hafford. Then came the biggest bombshell. Maya introduced recovered dashcam and bodycam footage, long thought deleted. With help from Layla Ortiz, her tech expert, the files had been restored from corrupted cloud backups. The video showed the traffic stop in real time, Briggs placing the small bag of drugs under Maya's seat while Danner distracted her at the window. The audio picked up Danner muttering, "All set?" just before Briggs reappeared holding the planted evidence. The courtroom was stunned. Reporters raced to upload footage to their outlets. Protesters began gathering outside the courthouse. Calls for Hafford's resignation began trending online. The city's mayor was forced to issue a public statement calling the revelations deeply troubling, but Maya remained composed. She had one final statement that day. This isn't about revenge. This is about truth, about accountability, and about sending a message that no one, no badge, no bench is above the law. At that moment, it became clear. This trial was no longer about whether Maya was guilty. It was about how deep the corruption ran and how far she was willing to go to cleanse it, and she wasn't done yet. The air inside the courtroom was heavy as the trial reached its final stretch. Outside, the building was surrounded by protesters, journalists, and activists chanting Maya Ellison's name. What began as a routine prosecution had become a full-blown national scandal, and all eyes were on the final verdict. The jury, visibly shaken by the last days of explosive testimony and undeniable video evidence, returned after only 3 hours of deliberation. The courtroom fell into silence as the foreperson stood to deliver the verdict. On all charges against Dr. Maya Ellison not guilty, gasps, then cheers erupted in the room. Maya closed her eyes briefly, exhaling deeply, not in relief, but in resolve. She had expected this outcome. Her name had been cleared, and the public now knew the truth about the officers and Judge Hafford. But her mission was far from over. Judge Hafford, pale and shaken, called for order. But the courtroom had already turned against him. In the wake of the verdict, he was bombarded by calls from the press and civic groups demanding his resignation. Meanwhile, the district attorney's office, under immense political pressure, quietly opened an inquiry into his conduct. Outside the courthouse, Maya addressed a crowd of cameras and supporters. Her words were sharp and direct. I stood in this courtroom alone, but I was never alone. I had the truth on my side. What happened to me was not a one-time incident. It is a reflection of a system that punishes those who speak out. But starting today, that system will answer to us. She did not gloat or celebrate. Instead, she called for calm and reform, urging her supporters not to seek vengeance but justice. What the public didn't know, however, was that Maya had been in quiet talks with the city council and the mayor's office for weeks while the trial was unfolding. Moved by the case and under immense political pressure, the council had created a new independent oversight position, Police Oversight Commissioner, with full authority to investigate, audit, and restructure the police department. Only one name had been seriously considered: Dr. Maya Ellison. 2 weeks after her acquittal, the city announced her appointment in a press conference that sent shockwaves through law enforcement circles. The very woman the department tried to destroy would now oversee their policies, personnel files, internal affairs procedures, and disciplinary actions. LT, Briggs, and SGT. Danner, who had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation, were summoned to police headquarters for an internal meeting. Rumors swirled that new charges were coming. The moment they walked into the conference room, they froze. At the head of the table sat Maya Ellison, wearing a tailored black suit, the seal of the oversight office behind her. She looked up, calm and commanding. "Gentlemen," she said, "please take a seat. We have a lot to discuss, starting with your resignations and the pending federal charges." The room went still. The tables had turned completely and irreversibly. Atmosphere inside the police department headquarters was suffocating. Rumors had been flying for days, and the hallways buzzed with nervous energy. Officers who had once laughed off Dr. Maya Ellison's legal battle now whispered her name with caution, even fear. Word had spread that she was about to begin her new role as Police Oversight Commissioner, a role with sweeping powers to investigate misconduct, audit operations, and restructure the department from the ground up. What no one expected was how fast she would move. On her first official day, Maya requested a full staff meeting with all senior officers, captains, lieutenants, and internal affairs. The location: the department's main briefing auditorium. The very room where officers had once celebrated questionable arrests and quietly circulated jokes about community activists. Now that room was silent as officers took their seats. Tension hung in the air like smoke. Then the doors opened, and Maya walked in. She carried herself with the composed authority of someone who had already won the biggest battle of her life. Dressed in dark gray, her commissioner badge clipped to her jacket, she stepped up to the podium. A massive screen behind her displayed 3 words in bold white: "Accountability starts now." There was no fanfare, no long speeches. She began. Bluntly, some of you know me as a defendant. Some of you know me as a target, and some of you helped try to bury me. But I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for reform. Her voice was calm, but resolute. She laid out her plan with clarity: an independent review board to assess use-of-force incidents, mandatory body cam audits every 30 days, a public misconduct registry to track officer complaints, and full cooperation with the Department of Justice's ongoing investigation into systemic corruption, starting with the arrest and prosecution of L.T. Briggs and S.G.T. Danner. Gasps rippled through the room. She turned her gaze directly to the 2 men seated near the back. They hadn't spoken. They hadn't moved. They were pale, visibly sweating, and fully aware that their power had officially collapsed. L.T. Briggs, S.G.T. Danner, you are hereby relieved of duty, effective immediately, she said. Federal agents are waiting outside to escort you. No one clapped. No one smirked. This wasn't a moment for celebration. It was a reckoning. As federal agents entered the room and led the disgraced officers away, Maya continued addressing the department. This is not the end of your careers. It's the beginning of your accountability. To wear a badge is to serve, not to control. If that's not what you signed up for, you should walk out right now. No one moved. She finished her address with one final message: I don't want fear. I want respect. And I will earn yours by demanding justice, not just for me, but for every person this department has ever failed. After the meeting, Maya stood quietly in her new office. She looked out at the city skyline, then reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small, worn photograph of her father, a civil rights leader beaten during protests decades earlier. She placed it beside her badge and whispered, "We made it, Dad, and I'm just getting started." The fight was over, but the mission had only begun.